So some of you may know Christy Bates. I think she was in our fourth Dharmacharya class, and she's approaching her transition. She thought that, well, they gave her about 6 months to live, and when she went to the hospital for treatment yesterday, they've reduced it to a few weeks because she's decided that she does not want the chemo is just too hard on her. And so she said she'd rather have shorter time, but more quality than and so she's decided to go into hospice starting tomorrow. So I'm going to see her on Saturday. Dustin lives there in Tennessee, is going to do, and he was in her Dharmacharya class. So they're Dharmacharya sisters and brothers, and sister and brother, and he's going to do her her funeral. But you know, I have to say that the only thing that a teacher wants is for you to be able to handle the vicissitudes of life. That's the only, it's really the only thing. We don't, anything else that is offered is above and beyond that. And to see how she's handling, you know, it is so inspiring to me. And I know that she really, she's not pretending, you know what I mean? Of course, from time to time, thoughts can come and invade the mind, but it cannot stay. Those thoughts only stay if you attach to them. And it's the fruit of your practice. And the time to practice is not when you're out in the middle of the water and you wish you had taken swimming lessons. The time to practice is when you can hold to the side of the pool. And so that's why the Buddha said the best meditation that you can do, regardless of your age, regardless of your status, regardless of your condition, is meditation on death. We think, oh, that's so morose, or, you know, but by constantly doing right meditation on death, you know, everything, like when we don't get what we want, when things don't feel comfortable those are like mini deaths. Many mean little, like mini deaths, you know, but all of them are in preparation for the great death. And that time can come for you if you are practiced and skilled. Tissue. Nancy, give me tissue. Thank you. If you're practiced and skilled in how you look at life and how you approach life, you will be ready. You will be ready for death because you won't see it. You'll see the illusory nature of it, and it's one thing to talk about it, but it's something else to really prepare ourselves for it. But if we have handled our issues and affairs in life, if we handle we can always handle the ups, but if we can handle the downs in life, then we will absolutely be prepared for death. And it's a way that we help our families to be prepared. Oh, I love you, love you, love you, is what we always say. And we all kissy face, you know, but it's more than that. It's living life in a way that, but through your example, you uplift and prepare your family. So it's not by teaching them Dharma or preaching to them about right and wrong and good and bad, but it's only through the way we actually handle the vicissitudes of life. And I can say that she was an excellent student, and she's an exemplar. She is truly a Dharmacharya. Um, uh, the word acharya has been translated as teacher, but it is more akin to one who exemplifies or one who embodies. So Dhammacharya is one who embodies the Dhamma. So they actually portray the Dhamma in a living way. I'm going up to see her on Saturday. And she's making all of her preparations the next couple of days. And I'd ask you to keep her in your heart and in your prayers, but mostly to have the aspiration, that you can have the level of realization and confidence in the Dharma. It helps us to become more appreciative of this practice and what it really is. And it ceases to be something that's in that kind of academic, intellectual quadrant, but it is more, it becomes central in a certain way. It becomes the lens through which we see life and through the lens through which we walk out life. And I'll tell you, if you attend to the Dharma and appreciate it in that way, it will not fail you at the time that you need it. But we have to take baby steps. Incrementally, we build up to this place. It doesn't come overnight, but it never comes if we don't build. It's like I'm still on zero weights. Like when I go to the gym, he said, he took away the 2 pounds, said, just pretend you're holding some, and so I act like I'm holding them. But the time will come when, it's probably here now, when I should be doing at least the 2 pounds, and then I'll get up to 5 pounds at some point, and then 10 pounds, but I can't just start with 10 pounds. So when we're going through these things, these vicissitudes, these issues, these setbacks, these losses in life, he never promised you wouldn't have them. Somebody questioned the Buddha on that, and he said, I never said that this is going to be a rose garden. No, those things are still going to happen in your life due to karma. But what I'm saying is that you can have what you need to be able to handle all of the issues of life. And so we should make our calling and election sure, and we should really ponder why we do this, why we gather 4 times a week, most of us, and we're loving it, but it should be showing up in our behavior. That's when we'll know, when we can not just talk it, but when we can walk it out in our lives, and see those little incremental ways that we are improving, that we are developing, that we are able to lay something down, that we're able to take something up, and then you'll have that confidence within yourself that I like the way the Bible says that many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them from them all, and if I have to rely on you to bring me out of something, that's pretty good if I can rely on you. But when I can rely on myself to bring myself out of something, then I'm no longer taking dependence upon another, but I am developing the quality and the character to be just like that one that I rely on. That's the ultimate reliance. That's the ultimate reliance. And when the only way that I found the Dharma was when I reached a place that I didn't want to have to rely on somebody, for my happiness, somebody to save me, somebody to bless me, somebody to, but I found out that I could bring that to myself by the renewing of my mind. So if this Dharma is not shifting, changing, washing, renewing your mind, then you have not yet stepped into the Dharma. You've not yet become a Dharma practitioner. And we laugh and we have some fun. Some fun here, or at least it tickles me, even when it's showing me like how ridiculous I am or how, but I count it all joy, because I know that incrementally and step by step, I am being prepared, to be able to handle whatever life, vicissitudes in life, whatever vicissitudes come in life. And so you can even still find a joy in the midst of sorrow. So today I'm going to shift just a little bit because I let Sante borrow the text I was using and that he was bringing back today, and he's not feeling well, so I don't have the book, Sante.
I'm sorry, Venerable. I literally thought about that as soon as I logged on to Dharma Top. I was like, oh, shoot.
But so I'm going to approach it from a little different angle. This is my, well, this is not my original one. It's in worse shape than this. I can hardly open it because it is just falling apart. So, but this was my third Majjhima Nikaya. And so I'm always going back to it. I had glasses.
They're on the table.
Thank you.
You need your glasses?
I found them. So there is so much I'm giving you sound bites on Jhana. And the reason that I'm just giving you sound bites is because, there's more than one way to get to a destination. And sometimes when we learn a technique, when we learn a technique, we think that that's the only way, the technique that we were taught. That's the only way, that's it. That's the only way to get there, But the fact is, there are many different ways that one can enter into jhana. So in the suttas, and it talks about the jhanas, if you actually read them, they say something that describes it, but if you go with the description of them, they don't really describe how you get into it. For instance, he says, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome mental states, one enters upon and abides in the first jhana, accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. That's what it says. Okay, so that's a description, but that's not a how to get in there. is what I'm saying. So when people start doing their practice, they are looking at the conclusion, and when they mentally agree or assent to what it says, then they say, oh, I'm in the first jhana. I'm secluded from sensual pleasures. I'm secluded from unwholesome states. And they're thinking this, right? And which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure, or pleasure and joy, whichever way you want to translate those two words, that's born of this seclusion, me sitting here in this state. So I must be in the first jhana. Okay. And so we can fool ourselves and think we're in there if we don't go any further than that. So today I wanted to say that, first of all, when the Buddha talked about entering into jhanas, he was speaking of states that were more sublime than knowledge and vision. So first you got to have knowledge and vision. And that's why when we first come and we start taking meditation classes or courses, we don't have any knowledge and we don't even know what vision is. We just sit and we get an instruction. And we say we are going to sit for 30 minutes or whatever. And there's virtually no way, because that's a higher state, first of all, that it supersedes knowledge and vision. So in the Majjhima Nikaya, in Sutta number 30, it's called the Shorter Discourse on the Simile of the Heartwood. And when we first started Heartwood, it was because we had such an emphasis, Panyadeep and I, on meditation. And we wanted people to really be able to enter into a true meditation, because we saw how superficial, meditation was here in the West. And so that's actually how the name Heartwood came about. And so I want to give you the states that you should have before you can actually even approach the meditation that leads to jhana. It says there are some who go forth out of faith from the home life into the homeless life, considering, I am a victim of birth, aging, and death, of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I am a victim of suffering, a prey to suffering. Surely an ending of this whole mass of suffering can be known. So now that's the mind set up, you see. It's not for just sitting so that I'll feel better, or so I can just let go for a while. It is a concentrated effort of seeing our true condition, and not saying, oh, that's so negative. It's not negative. It is our true condition. And so one moves towards meditation when one has realized this. I am a victim of birth, aging, and death, of sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I am a victim of suffering, a prey to suffering. Surely an ending of this whole mass of suffering can be known. He says, and based on this thought, he arouses no desire to act. He makes no effort for the realization of those other states that are higher and more sublime than the gain and honor and renown that one gets from appearing to be a good practitioner. Um, hmm. And the Buddha said, I say this person is like a man needing heartwood, who came to a great tree standing possessed of hardwood and passing over its hardwood, its sapwood, its inner bark, and its outer bark, cut off its twigs and leaves, took them away, thinking that they were hardwood. And so, whatever it was he had to make with hardwood, his purpose will not have been served. So he's saying it's like taking all of the bark and the scrapings from a tree and leaving the inner part of the tree by which we actually make things, that we're not going to achieve our goal. And he says that if we miss it like this, we will not be able to actually enter into these states. We can talk about them, but we won't actually enter them. He says that even if one becomes pleased with their attainment of virtue, like, I'm a good person, I am, a good-hearted person, I'm a giver, I'm a, whatever you want to say, and it's not like braggadocious. I mean, it's true. You might really be those things. He says, one who does not boast about himself and disparage others, one who arouses desire to act, uh, and who does not hang back and who's not slack, It says, and so that one achieves some kind of attainment of concentration because he has an intention towards it. So he can say, I'm concentrated. My mind is unified. Says, but he has only achieved the attainment of virtue. He has not achieved the attainment of concentration. So it's basically saying memorizing or understanding the suttas, the Vinaya, the Abhidhamma, all of that is good. But unless this moves into an active phase, it's like talking about dying and having a date for your death. Two very different things. So it's this living thing that we have to enter into. So he says we can't be pleased with honor and renown. We can't even be pleased with our intention being fulfilled. He says we can't be just pleased with arousing a desire to act or making an effort for the realization of, uh, of mental states that we have read about. He said, but one has to reach for something higher than that, that is higher and more sublime than this knowledge, than aspiration, than vision. And he said, and then he does not hang back and is not slack. And so they asked the Buddha, they said, well, what then are the states that are higher and more sublime? the knowledge and vision. And that's when he brought in jhanas. Here, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, mental states, one enters and abides upon and abides in the first jhana. And he gives the qualities of the first jhana. So that's why I always say, and then he goes on again and he talks about the second jhana, which has self-confidence and singleness of mind without applied and sustained thought. And then he talks about the third jhana, where there's the fading away of the rapture and a kind of equanimity and mindful and awareness, still feeling pleasure with the body. And so that one is said he has a pleasant abiding here and now. And then there's the abandoning of the pleasure and the pain and the previous disappearance of joy and grief. So grief disappeared in the first, right? Second, jhana, joy starts to become full and become bliss, like the difference in seeing an oasis when you're on the desert and know you can crawl to it, versus actually getting to the oasis and having drunk sufficiently. Then one has that satisfied feeling that disappears finally. In the third jhana, and there was the disappearance of grief in the first jhana, right? So first and third, now he's abiding in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and a purity of mindfulness due to the deep equanimity, or as Buddha calls it, boundless generosity. And that takes you to your first four jhanas. And then there are four jhanas that are more sublime than that. And that would be talking about infinite space, infinite consciousness, the base of nothingness, and neither perception nor non-perception. Yeah. And so there are things that have to be developed, is what I'm saying, before one can sit with meditation and truly enter it. So I thought today, just kind of taking you forward and then taking a couple steps back to add on something, because if we gave all of it up front, you just say, oh, never mind, but to give you a little bit of it, to establish a little bit of hope or confidence in it, and then to back up and say, oh, but you got to also add this, and you have to also add that. And when you do it in this way, it becomes accomplishable. And sometimes one doesn't have to follow every step. When we say it's done in an incremental way, it doesn't mean, but you have to complete every single step in that process, because there's some ways that you are, particularly in your temperament, that allows you to bypass some aspects because you're already developed in that. So you don't have to do that one. It's almost like taking a test and you can skip. You can skip that because that's already in you. But we have to put all the steps in there to make sure we cover all the different circumstances, and all the different temperamental issues that people have. So I thought I would go back today and talk a little bit from the Visuddhimagga on the Path of Purification in the section on taking a meditation subject. One other aspect that's very important. Now it talks about how you should approach the teacher for meditation object or subject, and I'm not going to read that today. But I need a clip. Oh, no, I have my rubber band. And see, I call that a little bit of Dharma wisdom right there. The whole rubber band thing, because I sit up here all the time trying to hold pages, and then sister comes in with these humongous rubber bands, and like that's just perfect. This is the detailed explanation of the words, approach the good friend, the giver of a meditation subject. Now, as to the words, one that suits his temperament, there are 6 kinds of temperament: greedy temperament, a hating temperament, deluded temperament, a faithful temperament, intelligent temperament, and speculative. So what are the 6? There's greedy, hating, deluded, speculative, faithful, and intelligent. 6 kinds of temperament. One of a faithful temperament is parallel to one of a greedy temperament. And that's because faith can be strong when exercised and it's borne out to be true, in the same way that like a greedy person can be strong in his faith in what he's doing when he's successful. Okay, so in a sense, it's the special quality of a faithful person of a faithful temperament has a special quality being near to one of a greedy temperament. But in an unprofitable way, greed is affectionate. So a greedy person loves their wealth, right? And in a profitable way, faith is affectionate. Anybody confused about that? So one who is prone to be faithful, to have confidence, is the same way as one who has a greedy temperament that sticks to things that they like and that they want. And both of them have a certain kind of a strength, And so when I said, okay, so I know I'm one of a faithful temperament. And so when I first read this, it really put me on the lookout for, if it's parallel to greed, it lets me know that I have to watch out for greed, right? So I know what I'm on the lookout for all the time, and how much I can stick to something that I like, how much I can attach to something like that. So, but here's the similarity. Greed does not give up what is harmful, while faith does not give up what is beneficial. One of an intelligent temperament is parallel to one of a hating temperament, because understanding is strong when profitable karma occurs in one of a hating temperament. In an unprofitable way, hate is disaffected and does not cling to its object. In a profitable way, understanding and does not hold to its object, and so in a profitable way is understanding. One's unprofitable, one is profitable, but they have the same characteristic, the same, not the same quality, but the same characteristic. That means that, you know how intellect or understanding can make you be very rational, right? It can make you let go of something because common sense tells you this. And in the same way, hate can easily let go of something, or somebody just love them to death until they did that thing. They're gonna like just cut them off. And so he says that these two are parallel. Speculative temperament is parallel to one of a deluded temperament, because obstructive applied thoughts arise in one who is deluded. And so delusion is restless owing to perplexity. And applied thoughts in the speculative one is due to overthinking. So a lot of times when we are trying to assess things from a psychological perspective, the Dharma has its own psychology. It's not Western psychology, but it has its own psychology. And it tells us what the obstacle is, and it tells us what the opposite of that is, so that we can understand it from its operational side and from its non-operational side. So there are two things I look at because I am of a faithful temperament. I look for the signs of greed. And because I am of a speculative temperament, I look for delusion within myself. I'm actively looking for it. And because these are parallel temperaments. Then it goes into what the source of those temperaments are. For instance, it says the first three kinds of temperament, that's excluding the, let me read it. Herein, as some say, the first three kinds of temperament to begin with have their source in previous habit. So the first three he talked about were the greedy, the hating, and the deluded temperament, right? They have their source in elements and humors. Apparently, one of a greedy temperament has formerly had plenty of desirable tasks and gratifying work to do, or has reappeared here after dying in a heaven. One of a greedy temperament has formerly had plenty of desirable tasks and gratifying work to do, or has reappeared here after dying in a heaven. One of a hating temperament has formerly had plenty of stabbing and torturing and brutal work to do, or has reappeared here after dying in one of the hell or the Naga existences. And one of a diluted temperament has formerly drunk a lot of intoxicants and neglected learning and questioning, or has reappeared here after dying in an animal existence. It is in this way that they have their source in previous habit. So I could look at my life, I'm telling you how to examine yourself. I'm just using myself as an example. So I would always think, okay, yeah, I must have come from a heaven realm because I like certain things, and I would always take that view or that approach. I still think that partly too. But when I started really, like looking deeply with myself, I could see that it said, had plenty of desirable tasks and gratified work to do. And my life has really been a blast. Like the things that I decided that I wanted to do, and the things that I do, and what I could see is possible, and and so this greedy temperament, you can't just say, oh, that person is greedy. Know that it has a source in something. So it helps take the focus off the person, and we're looking at the quality. Yeah, the source. We're not just saying, oh, that person is greedy and that person is hateful or that person is, we always look at the person, and if we are the person, we look at ourselves as if this is us. But he says, go back and consider that there is a source that produces, this kind of character. It didn't like just happen. We threw up something in the air, heads you're greedy and tails you're delusional, but it has a source. So I started contemplating on what could be the source, because you can't uproot a thing, a problem until you figure out, where it's coming at you from. And so I decided, like maybe I reappeared here after dying in heaven. And that's why at such a young age as a child, I was reaching for things in a certain way that continued on from there. But my incoming karma just put me in a whole different situation. That's why it says that a parent observes a child to determine how they should bring them up. But my parents didn't know how to observe me and to bring me up in a certain way, because they didn't have any learning about this. They didn't have any teaching on it, didn't have a perspective. It's just we have babies and we raise them, you know. But if they had been trained, and if I had been, when I had my children, and I did have some of it, because in the Bible, I was a Christian, and it said, train up your child in the way they should go, and when they're older, not depart from it. That's all I could think about. And all I could think about is I did not want I did not want my Black son to be a statistic in America. That was the number one thing for the boy, because life is perilous for them. And so I would always watch him and look at his behaviors, and I could see his manners, and my job was to try to train him up in those ways instead of trying to make him what I wanted him to be. And that worked for me for a while, but then when it was almost time for him to be independent, I'm like, you're gonna have to learn how to work or something, because he liked comics, and he had like all the comic books, and he would draw comics. Then he started making his own comic books. And I supported him in that until he started getting old, about 16. Look, you're going to have to get something else on your mind, because you're going to have to be moving on in a couple of years. And I pushed him towards what we were involved in, which was, financial services and stuff like that. And he hated it. He hated it. And then about 10 years later, all those comic books that he had, the one day we just had a big bonfire and we burned them all, driving the foolishness of a child far from him. And those comic books, I mean, like, they were worth $100,000, $200,000, and so on. I'm trying to put him in something, and so I got it part right, but I got it part wrong. So we have a chance to do things a little bit better. Now, observe your child to see what their peculiar lararities are, what their temperament is, you know, and know the possible sources for that behavior. And then you know how to work with them. So I never had to work on my children, uh, how can I say it? Like, each child had something in particular that I needed to work with them on. So like, my son couldn't watch TV because he was always looking for a way around a rule. My daughters, they could watch TV without me being home. This is when UHF first came out and they started having adult programming, right? So I said, okay, you can't watch UHF. My son will turn it on and put his chair to the back of the TV, and they'll say, "Mom, he's watching UHF." And he said, "No, I'm not. I'm listening to it. I'm not watching it." And so, and so that's what I mean by observing, so we have to learn how to observe our behaviors. That's the only way we're going to uproot the behaviors that hinder us. And not from a hating that behavior perspective, but from understanding that behavior, you see. That's what I'm saying. And when you get this right, you'll begin to understand everybody else's behavior. And if you want to study it, it's in the Visuddhimagga, section 3, the taking of a meditation subject. It goes into a lot of detail like this. It also talks about which elements are predominant, or whether they are balanced in your body. There, persons of a diluted temperament have two elements that are prominent: earth and fire. He is of hating temperament because the other two elements are prominent. That's air and water. But one who is of a greedy temperament has all four in equal measure. You see how he's taking it out of such a personal thing? We talk about this person and that person, but he's just taking it out of the personal category and saying there are markers for this. So you can understand this. You don't have to beat your breast and say, I'm a this, I'm a that, because he's removing it from the sense of a personal, separate personalities. And he's talking about the factors that comprise sentient beings, in what proportions, in what order, through what karmic conditions. And so it helps us when we're working on things that we drop the I, like I'm like this and I'm that, I'm this, because that's what causes us to fasten down on these illusory, these false views and these false opinions, and they become so deep-seated in us that we can't uproot them. And so if you look at it, the Buddha starts just deconstructing this whole sense of a personal person, and he talks about the composition of the elements, and he talks about what came before this life. Then he talks about some other things. He says, here's the fact. These beings, what beings? Us, he's talking about us. Have prominence of greed or prominence of hate or prominence of delusion governed by previous root cause. For when in one man, at the moment of his accumulating, what would be accumulating karma?
Lifetime after lifetime.
That's your rebirth linking karma. So coming into this world, you have the egg and the sperm and the consciousness, the Gandhava, that rebirth linking consciousness. Takes those three to make a person. If the rebirth linking consciousness does not enter into that process, then the child is stillborn, or they abort before they have accumulated limbs and so forth. So it takes the sperm, the egg, or they call it the essence and the blood, and the Gandhava or the rebirth linking consciousness. And because in our science, we don't have a place for the rebirth linking consciousness. You see, we're missing the main element of our personality or our temperament, what causes us to be here, because we only consider the egg and the sperm come together and they make a baby, But we've left out one important part, and that is the accumulating karma or the rebirth producing karma. So he says, at this time, in one, greed is strong and non-greed is weak. Non-hate is strong or non-delusion is strong, and hate and delusion are weak. And so then his weak non-greed or non-delusion or non-hate is unable to prevail over the greed, hate, and delusion. And that's why someone can be of a greedy temperament, but can be good-natured, and not easily angry, and can also possess understanding with knowledge like a flash of lightning. And so you say like no person is any one thing, but within each of us, we have to recognize our predominant temperament, because that determines how we instruct ourselves and how we work on ourselves is knowing this. So it says, then it was asked, then how is it to be known? How can one know this person is of a greedy temperament, or of a faithful temperament, or of a hating temperament, or of an intellectual temperament, of a speculative temperament, of a delusional temperament? He said, by posture, by action, by eating, by seeing, and so on, by the kind of mental states occurring, temperament can be recognized. By posture, when one is of a greedy temperament and is walking in his usual manner, he walks carefully, putting his feet down slowly, putting them down evenly, lifting them up evenly, and his step is springy. One of a hating temperament walks as though he were digging with the points of his feet, puts his foot down quickly, lifts it up quickly, and his step is dragged along. One of a deluded temperament walks with a perplexed gait. He puts his foot down hesitantly, lifts it up hesitantly, and his step is pressed down suddenly. The stance of one of a greedy temperament is confident and graceful. That of one of a hating temperament is rigid. That of one of a deluded temperament is muddled. And likewise in sitting, one of a greedy temperament spreads his bed unhurriedly, lies down slowly, composing his limbs, and he sleeps in a confident manner. When woken, instead of getting up quickly, he gives his answer slowly, as if doubtful. One of a hating temperament springs his bed hastily, anyhow. With his foot flung down, he sleeps with a scowl. When woken, he gets up quickly and answers as though annoyed. One of a deluded temperament spreads his bed all awry and sleeps mostly face down with his body sprawling. When awoken, he gets up slowly, saying, Since those of a faithful temperament are parallel to those of a greedy temperament, and you got your two parallels, right? Their postures are therefore like those described above. So I started observing myself, like how I walk, you know? I started observing myself, like how, I stand with my posture. I started observing myself, how I lay in bed and fling all out. And I started observing myself, because I said, if I get with people who are really spiritual, regardless of what I said, that's why there's no point in faking, regardless of what I said, they will know me.
But the greedy person sounds good.
It's confident and graceful. Oh, just like when confident and graceful reminds me of what's that guy?
Give me a clue.
Musk.
Musk. Right, he reminds me of Musk. Musk feels like he owns the world. When I say graceful, this is what I mean. When you look at him, he's like a boy, like the world is my oyster. He's like far flung, and he has a certain confidence and everything. He's like typical,
No concern for convention.
No, right, no concern, doesn't have to. The world is truly his oyster. That's what they mean, that kind of sense of confidence and grace. It's like, have anything I want, do anything I want. I know the caliber of my mind compared to yours. And so it's in that sense. And so I looked, and when you look at them, you can begin to, this is not for figuring out what other people are. That's the problem that I have with, what's that?
The Enneagram.
The Enneagram, is that what it's called? And maybe it's not designed to look at other people, it's designed to look at yourself, but it is a tool that's used to assess other people. And that's basically the problem that I have with it. Not that I don't think it is, like accurate, but the whole mindset is for evaluating others. You can say it's to help others, help bring out the best in others or whatever, but it is a judging, I feel like it's a judging instrument. And
Yeah, companies use Myers-Briggs to hire people.
right, exactly. And so we just have it in our minds in sort of a wrong way of how to use something.
It doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, because I've used it to understand me and also to seek to understand others so I can optimize my relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, truly,
Yeah.
not that I didn't fall down and get a little judgy here and there, but for the most part.
It's like once you learn this, but if you could see like the whole introduction to how to assess and what assessment is for, it's really for yourself.
Right.
That's the best way to understand other people, is to understand yourself. And when you work at making your part the highest and the best part, then it creates a platform or capacity to surmount theirs, to graft them in a way that can be useful. And so it's tied into a whole kind of training. So we have a kind of psychological profile that how many, other than hearing me teach about it over the last 20 years, how many have ever heard any Buddhist teacher share this?
Share what?
What
This,
this,
I've never.
never.
Yeah.
Someone saying something?
Rob says no, or yes?
No, I'm saying that you're the only one like that shared this framework.
Yeah.
Well, there's a book. that
So-
she's-
So every few years, I bring it up. But that's in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification. And I have to say that the reason you don't is because it's really only taught to monks. Who like have gone 100%, supposedly 100% in, then they are entitled to have this other information. But because we live in a time where we now don't have to pass it down by word of mouth, but we got books and we can read them and we have access to them, then we can learn. So we should be making a lot more progress than yeah, than we're making. Let me continue. In the act of sweeping, one of a greedy temperament grasps the broom well, and he sweeps cleanly and evenly without hurrying or scattering the sand, as if he were strewing flowers. One of a hating temperament grasps the broom tightly, and he sweeps uncleanly and unevenly with a harsh noise, hurriedly throwing up the sand on each side. One of a deluded temperament grasps the broom loosely, and he sweeps neither cleanly nor evenly, mixing the sand up and turning it over.
That's delightful.
That's funny.
As with sweeping, so too with any action, such as washing and dyeing robes and so on. One of a greedy temperament, greedy and who's the parallel of greedy? Faithful, right? Who's the parallel of hating? Intelligent. And who's the parallel of delusional? Speculative, okay. As with sweeping, and I did all this, I got my broom out and I noticed how I started paying attention,
Sprinkle sand.
As with sweeping, so too with any action such as washing robes and so on. One of a greedy temperament acts skillfully, gently, evenly, and carefully. One of a hating temperament acts tensely, stiffly, and unevenly. One of a deluded temperament acts unskillfully, as if muddled, unevenly, and indecisively. Also, one of greedy temperament wears his robes neither too tight nor too loose, confidently and level all around. One of a hating temperament wears it too tight and not even all around. One of a deluded temperament wears it loosely and in a muddled way. Those of faithful temperament should be understood in the same faithful, intelligent, and speculative should be understood in the same ways. This is how temperaments may be recognized by actions. By eating, one of a greedy temperament likes eating rich, sweet food. When eating, one makes a round lump, not too big, and he eats unhurriedly, savoring the various tastes. He enjoys getting something good. One of a hating temperament likes eating rough, sour foods. When eating, he makes a lump that fills his mouth and he eats hurriedly without savoring the taste. He is aggrieved when he gets something not good. One of a deluded temperament has no settled choice. When eating, he makes a small, unrounded lump, and as he eats, he drops bits into his dish, smearing his face with his mind astray, thinking this and that. How the temperament may be recognized by seeing. When one of a greedy temperament sees even a slightly pleasing visible object, he looks long as if surprised. He seizes on its trivial virtues. He discounts genuine faults. And when departing, he does so with regret, as if unwilling to leave. When one of a hating temperament sees even a slightly unpleasing visible object, he avoids looking at it for long, as if he were tired. He picks out trivial faults, discounts genuine virtues, and when departing, he does so without regret, as if anxious to leave. When one of deluded temperament sees any sort of visible object, he copies what others do. If he hears others criticizing, he criticizes. If he hears others praising, he praises. But actually, he feels equanimity within himself, the equanimity of unknowing, though. So too with sounds. And those of a faithful temperament, intellectual or speculative, should be understood in parallel. This is how temperaments may be recognized by seeing and so on. By the states occurring. In one of a greedy temperament, there's frequent occurrence of states such as deceit, fraud, pride, evilness of wishes, greatness of wishes, discontent, foppery, and personal vanity. I think foppery means like saying things that people want to hear and stuff like that.
Putting on airs.
Yeah, putting on airs. If one of a hating temperament, in one of a hating temperament, there is frequent occurrence of such states as, you can guess that one. What?
Anger.
Anger, envy, disparaging, enmity, domineering. In one of a deluded temperament, states such as stiffness, torpor, agitation, worry, uncertainty, and holding on tenaciously with a refusal to relinquish. In one of a faithful temperament, there is frequent occurrence of such states as free generosity, desire to see noble ones, desire to hear good Dhamma, great gladness, ingenuousness, honesty, and trust in things that inspire trust. In one of intelligent temperament, there's frequent occurrence of such states as readiness to be spoken to, possession of good friends in the Dhamma, knowledge of the right amount in eating or mindfulness or awareness, a devotion to wakefulness, a sense of urgency about things that should inspire a sense of urgency in others and wisely directed endeavor. In one of a speculative temperament, there is frequent occurrence of such states as talkativeness, sociability, boredom with devotion to what is profitable, failure to finish undertakings, smoking by night and flaming by day, that is to say, hatching plans at night and putting them into effect by day. So that was how I knew I had a speculative temperament. That, because I have those kinds of mental states. And mental running hither and thither. This is how the temperaments may be recognized. Says, now, what I've told you has not been handed down in its entirety. It says, and they are only expressed according to the opinion of the teachers and cannot therefore be treated as authentic. But it is by penetration of minds or questioning the person that these can be known or verified in them. And then it goes on from there. So it's a good section that one can use to only for one's self-assessment. And remember, nobody is of any just one temperament, but we have different degrees. But it brings to your awareness the kinds of traits that are in you that you can see. This is all about knowing yourself. You see, that's what I'm saying. This is about knowing yourself. And then I would seek out remedies in the Dhamma. I would seek out and cures for what I think are my deficiencies. So I ain't trying to do the whole shebang. I'm just trying to work on the things that that I need to improve on to bring balance to my life in such a way that the teachings can penetrate. And then I'm looking to see how well I'm doing with that.
Venerable.
Yes.
So when it comes to like, you want to look for your primary temperament to choose a meditation object, and do you find that the meditation object that corresponds is really important to
I
achieve
do.
concentration?
I do. All of them can be profitable and useful, but some are particularly useful. Let's say that you have and then he talked about in here the Buddha gave 40 meditation subjects or 40 meditation objects, and they could be taken up based on desire because they're interested in perfecting something, or because it will help counteract, some behaviors based on their incoming karma, rebirth linking karma. So I've worked over the years with lots of different meditation subjects and lots of different meditation objects. And until you kind of have a handle on that, trying to get in the jhanas, which is the higher practice, becomes, difficult. It's sort of like putting the cart before the horse. Even if you practice Dharma for 10 years, but you have not worked on even understanding yourself, then it becomes difficult. And it was from there, after that, and when we first bought Heartwood, the reason why we felt we needed, in case anybody's wondering, why we needed so much space, is this goes on to tell you about a suitable resting place for each one of the temperaments. It talks about the right kind of food for each one of the temperaments. It talks about the right lodging. For instance, the right lodging for one of a diluted temperament should have a view and not be shut in, where the four quarters are visible to him as he sits there. The right kind of posture for him, a walking meditation is the best one. The right kind of object for his contemplation should be a bigger object, not something small, because his mind becomes more confused in confined spaces. For one of a faithful temperament, all directions given for one of a hating, let me see. Open view. For one with speculative temperament, an open lodging with a view where gardens and groves and ponds and pleasant panoramas are visible to him. As he sits there, this would not be right because he's already out there. So he needs a more confined space. So he needs quarters that look into an enclosed courtyard, something to bring his mind in as opposed to expanding it out. One of a diluted temperament, it needs to go outward. One of a speculative, a diluted or speculative, it needs to be drawn in. One of a hating temperament, it needs to go out because they need to have more expansiveness. So it basically tells you how you should, it's teaching how you should set up your home, how you should, that will help to shift the karma, shift your rebirth linking karma. And if we don't do some of these things, then we live and die. And we've never, and so we just keep coming back again and again and again, because we haven't done the things that help to balance out the karma so that karma gets finished. And I love this because just this one section on the taking of a meditation subject, it just set up my whole life and my whole outlook on life. And I try to live my life by governing myself according to these principles. And it took over 10 years to work on this. Couldn't work on everything at one time, but I would work on something and I start to see the correlation. And I embrace this as much as I embraced Western psychology. But to bring the Dharma in to make it Western psychology is a mistake because they're not the same thing. They're not the same way of dealing. It doesn't give a world view or even a spiritual view of what is happening to you and why it's happening to you, and I'm not saying that Western psychology cannot be useful to people, because I think it can be very, very useful to people. But I'm just saying it's not it's not, the Buddhist psychology that helps us actually, overcome. It can be useful for functioning in this world, and we need to know how to function in this world. But in terms of the shifts and changes we need to make in the mind that we inherited, you got to know that mind, because you inherited that mind. You didn't make this one, you inherited it. And so we need to know what mind we inherited and decide what we can do. Otherwise, we're trying to change things, but we can't change them. We don't know what mind we even inherited and what its cures are, or from a dharmic perspective. And so then he gave, and yes.
Give me an example of a a meditation subject other than the breath.
Okay, so there are the 10 kasinas. There's the 10 kinds of foulness. There's the 10 recollections. There's the 4 divine abidings. There's the 4 immaterial states. There's the meditation on perception and the meditation subject of defining. And they are all found in the Path of Purification, taking meditation subject. So in these days, originally, everybody didn't just we're gonna sit and we're all gonna do mindfulness meditation. This is how meditation, how one took up a meditation practice. They went to the teacher and they asked to be given one. By the time it came here, we had meditation centers and we have everybody following a procedure or prescribed course of how to do it. And that makes the difference in your attainment. So now that the book is here, of course, one can, now that it's written, one can for themselves go on an exploration, sometimes I would say, people say, oh, you get me, you see me, and it's not because I really get you or see you. I get you and see you because I studied this, and I watch people when they move around. I watch people how they interact, or I listen to things that they say and I know how to put it in, but I'm putting it in from a Buddhist perspective, and so then when I'm talking or giving a Dharma talk, I can speak to different things, it's not like I'm reading your mind, I'm speaking to minds based on temperaments. But this is my little cheat sheet. Yeah. So that's kind of different. So don't have to worry thinking anybody's reading your mind. And I'm gonna end in 2 minutes. Don't think that, and so sometimes people are afraid or they're hiding or they're putting on a certain thing because, or trying to camouflage or they're fearful or they feel a sense of shame because they think, somebody's reading their mind, or I might know what's in their mind. It's it absolutely is not, because these are characteristics of income and karma, and they are not the person themselves. Do you understand what I mean?
Yep.
They're not the person themselves. So one who is practicing rightly is never looking at you as this is you, but it's just the manifestation of different kinds of temperament. And that's why, if they are a faithful teacher, if they, are a faithful God, they're not judging you in this way. And when they're pointing to something, they're not pointing to you, they're just pointing to these factors that have aggregated and that you are oppressed by. you see. Yeah,
With that basis as understanding, forbearance is easy.
yeah.
We can
Yeah.
easily then practice forbearance
Yeah.
because we look at one another's differences and we. Well, I have this, you have that, so what, you know,
Mhm. I mean, it's just really not if we could separate this and see that they have an incoming karma, that they're all due to conditions, you know, and we will have a different approach to uprooting, the factors in our life that we want to uproot. First of all, we see them as they're not me, they're not mine, and they're not myself. And we will handle ourselves differently, and we won't be down as much, when we see these things manifest, because we understand that, if I don't know what Musk's, accumulated karma is, why he's so much smarter than me, why he likes certain things, I don't know, but I know now that there is a basis for it, is what I'm saying. And this helps me to understand. So it's no point in me like just having a hissy fit, spending my whole day talking about, can you believe what he just said? Can you believe what he just did? Can you, because that's all and we're using our own mind, using up our own mental energy with those kinds of thoughts, and it leaves no room for creative thoughts about what to do about something. Someone called me, and because she was sharing something that happened in her school, I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm not going to name the person, I'm not going to name the school, but it's happening all over the country, is that because he says we are going to use the schools to find undocumented, you know, people in this country. I mean, he just told you point blank, that's what they're gonna do. And so the other day when they did the attendance, it was a lot of kids absent, at the beginning of this week. But all of them were Latino, you know. And so right away, I thought, I remember when Latinos were afraid to go to school one time before. So what we did at Hartwood was we just created a little school there. And I bought a bus, and we bused kids into school at Hartwood. I said, and we declared Hartwood as a sanctuary. Sanctuary is like a city of refuge, like as a church religion institution. Get them there, and so that's how we handle it, because our mind didn't go to what is this problem and just burn itself out spinning on what is the problem, but how can I help? How can I help if we have to go through this time? How can I help? And that's what we did. So now this time I'm thinking, he said first thing was coming down on the sanctuaries. That's number one. So I said, okay. So now we have to find another means of doing it. But one's mind has to be open and expansive, not contracted and full of fear. But I started thinking right away, we might have to help the families in some kind of way. What is a way that we can help them? So you're striving like lawfully, but in a way that you are being beneficial. And so I put the question out there. I don't have an answer yet, but I'm looking for the answer. What might be required, of us. How do we help? So I thought, this is my friend of mine, and she started a Latino organization. I should call them and get the 411, because I know they are on it. We're on it when we hear something, but they're on it 24/7. And I said, so that's what I'll do. So she said, no, no need to do anything. Then, I'm thinking, if there's no need to do anything, there's no point talking about it. There's no point in talking about it because they're doing what they want to do. How do we do what we need to do? So we should have that mind as soon as one hears something about how can I help? Even just posing the question. It doesn't mean you take action before you know how to help, but that's what should naturally arise rather than the fear of what's happening. How can I help? What should I be doing? How can I participate? And we will be able to. Sometimes you have to go through something has to work out its course. That's the impermanence. What you see happening now has to do with how people have thought in the past, and now they've seized a platform by which they can work out and act on what they've thought. So where will our thoughts be? We have to have a major shift in how we are thinking, how we're using our mind at this time, because this is not just happening. This is the fruit of what has already happened. And right now, depending on how our mind goes, we're setting up for what will happen in the future. So we're going to have to shift our minds. I hope that was useful to you, and you can actually Google in the Visuddhimagga for just that chapter. And then after that, it talks about the 40 meditation objects and subjects. And we just use the breath because the breath is always with you. It doesn't require any external thing. And that's, but I'm just saying it's not, there's more than just one, So we're going to get to, and we are getting to it. I'm just trying to lay a basis and a foundation around meditation before we get to the Samo practice of supreme and unsurpassable Mahamudra of liberation, which the Buddha Master considers the bridge that takes us from our ordinary thinking mind and temperament and into meditation so that one can enter jhana. And he shows us what I call a hack or a shortcut to moving from just intellectually understanding something to actually being that thing in action. And that's our whole effort for this year, is moving from talk to action, and really experiencing the joy of a bodhisattva is that they can take action to deliver beings from suffering. And their minds are so developed in a particular way of looking that when they think it causes a shift in what is happening, by their thoughts, rather than them thinking something in response to something that they see. Yeah. Okay, I think this might have been a little tough one today. So those of you that are online, but sometimes it's good to know that there is more that we need to know if we want to see success in something. We have to go to, how do they do, they have this, like 2.0, then they go to 3.0. It's kind of like that. So we have to bump up our Dharma stuff from 1.0 Dharma light to 2.0. Yeah.
Update the software.
Updating the yeah, we gotta update the software.
Can I ask a question, Pannavati?
Yes.
I mean, it sort of seems like what you were saying to us is like, before you can really go deep into asking a teacher about what the meditation object is, you first have to. You have to establish the vision, establish the view, know your own mind, try to iron out some of your karmic defilements. And then you can look into this and see. And then there's like, it's always a lot that's required of us just to even to start at the baseline, is what you're saying. And we have to be okay with that.
Yeah, and so
Something like that.
yeah, absolutely. And we have to keep growing. We just keep regurgitating what we know because we're comfortable with that. Then we're not gonna, we'll be like a turkey bird instead of one of those that actually get off the ground. Yeah.
I mean, you're essentially asking us to not begin again, but to begin differently, like Soma says, and to be okay with the process.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you so much. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you and no danger. May you always be able to meet, however, the inevitable difficulties of life. Yeah. Mhm.